Iron Monkey presents the Lazaretto Letters, a found collection of unmailed, handwritten letters from 1922. Episode 11, Scary Sally. Today's first letter is from Loretta Patterson, addressed to Ellen Patterson, Messina, New York, stamped, sealed, and unpostmarked. Letter 1. Monday, May 29th, 1922. Dear Mother, I hope this letter finds you well. Did Isabel care for the fancy thimble you sent her? I'm certain she did. Her little collection must be quite something by now. Sally and I are getting by as best we may. We feel as well as can be expected. My hands and feet still ache, though they seem to be improving. The doctor tells us our condition has stabilized and shows no sign of further progress. I know that is meant as good news, yet the damage has already been done. The devastation of this past year, Mother, you would scarcely recognize us. And yet, somehow, Sally's spirit remains strong. She carries within her the same gentle light she always had. She is still our dear little girl, despite her appearance. It is as though her soul holds everything pure and beautiful in this world, sealed inside a fragile little vessel. Yes, the vessel has been scorched, yet her spirit remains untouched, with only the slightest crack in its shell. All that beauty pours out and blinds us with its purity. This morning, she told me she misses Nana's cookies, the ones with the almond slices. It would make her day if you could send a batch. I will not mention it, so it may be a pleasant surprise when they arrive. The good doctor has bought us these beautiful painted ceramic masks. Sally adores hers and wears it almost constantly. What a kind man he is to think of us in such a way. I have taken a small position organizing and distributing medicine to the other patients. It is only a few hours each day, but it makes me feel useful and pays $10 a month. It also helps pass the time in this lonesome place. Speaking of money, do you remember the carnival I told you about? I have been corresponding with its manager, Mr. Kane. I did not mention it before, but he has been pressing Sally and me to perform at the sideshow on Saturdays, right here on Lazaretto Island. He wishes us to do some sort of song and dance routine. Frankly, I found it odd and declined in the past, but his latest letter included $25 as an advance. $25! It gave me quite a pause. I suppose I could sing "Oh, You Beautiful Dolls" to Sally, and she could ham it up a bit. We'll wear the new masks for dramatic effect. I told him we would attempt one song this Saturday as a trial. He seemed overjoyed and said he would print posters to promote the act. I shall send you one when they arrive. With love to all, Loretta. Letter 2, written by Loretta Patterson, Lazaretto Island, addressed to Dr. Edwin Bloom, Lazaretto Island, unstamped, sealed, and unpostmarked. Monday, May 29th, 1922. Dear Dr. Bloom, I wish to thank you personally for the ceramic masks you so kindly purchased for Sally and me. They have brought great joy to my little girl. She wears hers night and day. It was a generous and thoughtful act, and I shall not forget it. I also realized that I never properly thanked you for granting my request to have the mirrors removed from our ward. Sally does not need to be reminded each day of the hardship she already bears. Gratefully, Loretta Patterson. Letter 3, written by Lester Billington, addressed to Hugh Billington, Syracuse, New York, stamped, sealed, and unpostmarked. Tuesday, May 30th, 1922, 8:30 a.m. Good morning, dear brother. After a rather bland breakfast, I ventured outside to peruse the courtyard. The weather was wonderfully pleasant, so I sat in the grass and took in the sun and fresh air. Among the recuperative was several children playing games upon the grounds without a care in the world. It warmed my heart to see such shining lights in this otherwise cold place. One little girl caught my attention as she appeared to be wearing a sort of theatrical mask. She was playing along with the others, so I did not think much of it at first. My attention then turned to a great hawk circling overhead. I wondered if he spied his luncheon hopping or slithering about below and was preparing to dive at any moment. Looking about, I soon noticed a small field mouse scampering through the grass, wholly unaware of the doom soaring above. As I watched the hawk circle, the playful sounds of the children shifted. It seemed they were chanting something. Still keeping one eye on the sky, I strained to make out the words. At first, I thought they were calling, "Sally, Sally, are you there?" But I was mistaken. When I turned back, I saw that 4 of them, 2 boys and 2 girls, had surrounded the little masked girl. They were taunting her and reaching for the mask. She stood her ground in quiet defiance. I cannot say with certainty, but I believe they were chanting, "Scaly Sally, are you scary?" I then noticed one of the boys was setting up the old pushover trick and got down on all 4s behind her. I knew what was coming next, so I rose at once to intervene. But before I could say anything, one of the girls shoved her hard over top of the prone boy. She toppled head over heels and hit the ground hard. Her mask went flying, and one of the girls grabbed it as it rolled through the grass like a wheel. I made briskly toward them to put a stop to the torment, but a hedgerow divided us and forced me to circle around them before I could reach the clearing. By then, the wretches were tossing the mask between them, laughing as she tried in vain to retrieve it. When I came within shouting distance, I called out sharply, "Hey!" They all turned at once, including the little girl. I stopped dead. Hugh, I scarcely know how to say it. The poor child's face was utterly ruined. They stood, frozen, no doubt expecting a sharp scolding. Instead, none came. The little girl seized the moment to snatch her mask and cover her face once more. I remained rooted to the spot, shocked and wordless. The stillness was broken when one of the girls shoved her from behind and fled. The others scattered soon after, laughing as they ran. She was left upon her hands and knees, her head bowed in what seemed like surrender, her mask lying a few feet away. I went to her and picked it up. It was finely crafted, delicately painted porcelain. Holding it out, I asked if she was hurt. She lifted her head, and I saw her face clearly for the first time. It was worse than I had feared. It scarcely seemed a face at all. Where her nose should have been, there lay only a dark abyss. Her lips were gone, giving her the appearance of a terrible, fixed smile. I could only suppose she had been burned in some dreadful fire or mauled by an animal. I'm ashamed to confess that the sight made me sick to my stomach. As I held out the mask, a cruel thought passed through my mind. Take it. Just take it. I despised myself for it and forced the thought away. Gathering myself, I looked instead into her eyes. They were as clear and blue as any I have ever seen in a child. She then took the mask from my hand and placed it carefully over her face. From behind it, I heard a small voice say, "Thank you, sir." It was a curious thing to hear such sweetness come from behind the fixed expression of cold porcelain. I lingered for a moment, and she turned to go. When she had gone a few steps, I called out, "Are you quite all right?" She turned back and replied, "Yes, sir, thank you. I'm fine." There was a grace in her manner that set her apart from her appearance. I asked her name, and she told me it was Sally. I introduced myself in turn and inquired whether the other children often treated her so poorly. She said they were not meant to play with her, though when they did, she was sometimes teased. I told her she must never let anyone bully her, and that she ought to sock anyone right in the nose who tried. She laughed and said I sounded just like her mother. I smiled at that. I asked when she had last seen her mother, and she replied that it had been that very morning, for her mother was also here upon the Lazaretto. It did not seem proper to inquire further about her mother's condition, so I let the matter rest. I cannot help but wonder whether she, too, is a patient here, or merely her daughter's guardian. I told Sally it had been a pleasure to meet her and urged her to keep her dukes up. She laughed and skipped away as though unburdened by her affliction and the cruelty of that morning. Her voice and manner were as light and free as the little field mouse gliding through the grass before me. It astonished me to see how readily she cast off her sorrow and carried on, as though none of it had touched her. I believe we would all do well to remember her example. Talk soon. Les. Letter 4, written by Lester Billington, addressed to Hugh Billington, Syracuse, New York, stamped, sealed, and unpostmarked, Tuesday, May 30th, 1922, 9:30 a.m. Hugh, just after I finished writing you, I happened to recount the story of the little girl in the mask to a fellow patient. He knew at once of whom I spoke, and then told me something I had not expected. She is a leper. I had no idea that any such cases were kept here upon the Lazaretto. I suppose it is only reasonable, yet I had always imagined that persons with the same affliction were confined solely to the state leprosariums. The news unsettled me greatly, for I could not recall whether I had touched her or not. I do not believe I did, though for a time I was quite alarmed. I have since been assured that my fears were largely unfounded. The nurses tell me the disease is not nearly so contagious as is commonly supposed, and is chiefly contracted through prolonged and intimate contact. All the same, my heart aches for the poor child. To live so young a life with such a disfiguring and incurable affliction, and then to be tormented by other children besides, it is more than any child ought to bear. I shall keep an eye out for those little brutes. They will not trouble her again on my watch. Not again. Your brother, Les. P.S. Good news. I've just been granted permission to venture out and explore the island. I will let you know if I find anything worth writing about. Letter 5 from Loretta Patterson, Lazaretto Island, addressed to Mr. Kane, Carnival Manager, Lazaretto Island, unstamped, sealed, and unpostmarked, Wednesday, May 31st, 1922. Mr. Kane, I am in receipt of the poster and accompanying note that were delivered to our room. I regret that I was unable to receive you in person. The artistry is quite good. However, I must object to the manner in which Sally is depicted. To present her as one monster among others is both inaccurate and unkind. Her likeness is rendered in such a way as to suggest some lurking horror beneath the mask. Scary Sally, indeed. I trust you understand why I cannot consent to such a title. I was under the impression that you wished for a modest mother and daughter performance, not that we should be exhibited as part of a grotesque display. Pray tell me whether this is the poster intended for circulation or merely a preliminary design. I should be content if her name were altered to something less injurious. Respectfully, Loretta Patterson. Letter 6, written by Lester Billington, addressed to Hugh Billington, Syracuse, New York, stamped, sealed, and unpostmarked, Thursday, June 1st, 1922, 3:30 p.m. Dear brother, never a dull moment here, it seems. No fantastical explorations for me today, but there was plenty of drama. I decided to stay put. I sat outside in the courtyard, but today was very hot and somewhat uncomfortable. Speaking of which, I would be grateful if you might send my ground felt hat at your convenience. The cap they have issued here is serviceable enough, but I confess I miss the weight of my own. So I sat there, antsy, half reading and half fanning myself with the newspaper, all the while looking around for those devils who had bullied that poor masked girl. I felt it was my duty to protect her. There were children playing, but I did not recognize the ones from the other day. I eventually grew weary. The morning paper soon turned into a rag to dab the sweat from my brow, so I retreated to some shade. There is little respite from the morning sun in the courtyard, so I ventured toward the hospital's side entrance, where there is a large portico of sorts. I rounded the corner and was presented again with that familiar scene. Toward the back of the hospital stood Sally, the little masked girl, surrounded by those merciless ruffians. This time, however, there did not seem to be any open antagonism. I walked in their direction, cautiously, ready to spring if she were attacked in any way. I listened carefully, but could not hear their conversation, though it seemed tense somehow. I saw something rise up momentarily, then slam down to the ground with a crash. The little masked girl dropped to the pavement, and I took off running toward them. Before I had reached within 50 feet, a woman burst from the hospital's side door in a confrontational stance. By the time I reached them, the whole scene became apparent. One of the girls had stripped Sally's doll from her hands, lifted it high, and smashed it upon the pavement, shattering its head into smithereens. Sally was scrambling on the ground, trying to gather the pieces, screaming, "No, no!" I ran up and placed my hand upon her shoulder to comfort her. She looked up at me with those blue eyes, now red with tears, shining through the holes of that smiling mask. This was not the same strong girl I had seen the day before. She could endure teasing and shoving, but the destruction of her little plaything seemed to have broken her. She was bawling her eyes out, desperately trying to collect the tiny shards of what had once been her little baby doll. I tried to gather the broken pieces of its head, but it was useless. I do not think it could be repaired. The damage was too devastating, to both the doll and to Sally. I looked up and saw the woman clearly. She was tall and slender, but what made her stand out was the gauze wrapped around her hands and face, covering her nose and mouth. She shot me a glaring look, and it was unmistakable. She had the same striking blue eyes as the little girl. She was obviously Sally's protective mother. The whole scene was so chaotic that I did not realize until then she had seized the girl who smashed Sally's doll by the shirt collar. The others scattered like frightened cockroaches. The little bully squirmed, but the woman crouched to her level and took her by the back of the hair, forcing her to meet her eye to eye. I cannot say whether the child was stunned like a defenseless kitten or simply immobilized by the woman's grip, but she did not move. Then, Sally's mother spoke slowly and clearly, and I quote, "This is the last time you torment Sally Patterson. If you utter another word to her, it had better be a compliment. If you speak about her, insult her, tease her, or lay one of your filthy hands on her again." She paused, then slowly pulled down the gauze, revealing a grotesque and disfigured face not unlike Sally's. She drew the terrified child's face within an inch of her own and muttered in a grave tone, "You will pray you look as pretty as Sally does now. God as my witness, I shall see to it." The little bully began to panic, struggling to escape the woman's grasp. The fury in her was unmistakable. The veins in her forearms and neck stood out with rage. She held the girl a moment longer, staring into her frightened eyes, then thrust her away. The child stumbled and fled in terror. After a moment, her gaze shifted toward me, but her eyes softened when she saw I was trying to help her daughter. I stood, removed my hat, and extended my hand, but she withdrew. She adjusted the gauze around her face, took a step back, and said in a low voice, "Best we not." I introduced myself, and she replied, "I'm Sally's mother, Mrs. Patterson." The apple does not fall far from the tree. She was poised, polite, and proud, despite her appearance and the scene that had just unfolded. My emotions were scattered. I was furious at the sheer wickedness of those heartless tyrants, yet my heart broke for Sally's vulnerability and sorrow, and I could not help but admire the way Mrs. Patterson stood up to those godless punks. There was nothing in this world like a protective mother. Hugh, I know I have already made a request, but I should like to purchase another doll for Sally. It was a fine porcelain doll with a bonnet. Would you kindly pick one up from Nicholson's and send it along with my hat this week? I shall reimburse you, of course. As Mother says, you will be rewarded in heaven for your good deed. Let me know if that is agreeable. Les. Letter 7 from Lazaretto Patterson, addressed to Ellen Patterson, Messina, New York, stamped, sealed, and unpostmarked. Friday, June 2nd, 1922. Mother, I do not wish to alarm you, but Sally is missing. When I awoke this morning, she was not in her bed. This has happened before, yet never in this manner. This time, she was nowhere to be found, and she did not appear at breakfast. I am praying she has merely lost track of time while exploring. You know how curious she is and how prone she is to wandering. I hope this is the case, and that she will return when hunger brings her back. The staff does not seem overly concerned, but they have promised to send a few orderlies to search for her. Mother, I have a dreadful feeling in my heart. There is a small gang of wicked children here who have been tormenting our sweet Sally. I confronted them firmly yesterday and warned them to keep away, yet something tells me they may have a hand in this. May the Lord forgive me, but if I discover that one of those wretched creatures has harmed my child in any way, I swear they shall answer to me for it, in this life or the next. I am beside myself with worry. I will write again as soon as I know more. Love, Loretta. This concludes Season 1 of the Lazaretto Letters, a found collection of unmailed, handwritten letters from 1922. Some stories refuse to remain buried. When we return for Season 2, more secrets will come to light. The Lazaretto Letters is produced and distributed by Iron Monkey. To share your reflections, offer your support, or learn more, visit enterthemonkey.com. Thank you for listening.